They thought humans were soft, weak, just another prey species hiding behind painted smiles and nervous laughter. The Galactic Council had seen 1,000 civilizations rise and fall. They knew predators, they knew warriors, and humans were neither. Until the day a human diplomat sat across from the Zrath warlord, smiled that same gentle smile, and said 6 words that changed everything. "We've been holding back for you." What happened next made the galaxy realize their terrible mistake. Humanity wasn't peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they were terrifying. This is the story of when humanity's polite mask finally slipped. Ambassador Sarah Chen had the kind face of someone's favorite teacher. Soft eyes, a warm smile. The type of person who would apologize for bumping into furniture. The Galactic Council loved her for it. For 20 years, humans had played the part perfectly. They joined the Council with heads bowed. They accepted the mining colonies on distant asteroids that no one else wanted. They smiled through trade deals that were barely fair. They apologized when other species mocked their weakness. The galaxy saw exactly what they wanted to see. Another harmless species, grateful to be included. But Admiral Marcus Stone knew the truth. He stood in the observation deck of humanity's defense station Omega, watching the daily reports flood in. His jaw was tight. His eyes were cold. "How long?" he asked his second-in-command. Commander Rita Vasquez pulled up the holographic display. "The Zrath Empire has destroyed 3 more human colony ships this month. 200 families just gone. And the Council calls it an unfortunate accident." "How many accidents does that make?" 14 in 3 years, sir." Marcus's hands formed fists. "And what does Ambassador Chen say?" "Same as always. Smile, apologize, ask for peace." The Admiral turned away from the stars. "The mask is getting heavy, Rita." "I know, sir. How much longer can we keep pretending we're sheep when we're wolves?" Rita met his eyes. She had served in the Human Defense Force for 30 years. She remembered what humanity was capable of. What they had survived: wars, plagues, near-extinction events. Humans didn't survive by being weak. They survived by being adaptable, relentless, and when necessary, absolutely ruthless. "The Council is holding their annual summit next week," Rita said quietly. "The Zrath Emperor will be there. He's planning to demand more human territories, more resources. He thinks we're too afraid to say no." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Then maybe it's time he learned what fear really means. Meanwhile, on Council Station Prime, Ambassador Chen sat in her modest quarters. The walls were covered with pictures of human children, families, farmers on distant colonies, young couples starting new lives on frontier worlds. Every face was a reminder of why she wore the mask, why she smiled when she wanted to scream, why she bowed when she wanted to fight, because peace was precious, but peace, she was learning, had a price. And that price was getting too high. Her communication console beeped. Admiral Stone's face appeared. "Sarah." "Marcus." She kept her voice neutral, but they'd known each other too long. He could hear the strain. "I'm sending you the latest casualty reports. I don't need to see them." "I already know. Do you?" His voice was sharp. "Do you know that the Morrison family's 5-year-old daughter asked the rescue crew why the bad aliens hurt them? Do you know she asked if saying sorry would make them stop?" Sarah closed her eyes. "Marcus, please. We're not doing this anymore, Sarah. The Joint Chiefs have voted. If the Zrath demand more territory at the summit, we're done pretending. You'll start a war." "No." Marcus leaned forward, his face filling the screen. "We'll end one. The Zrath have been at war with us from the beginning. They just didn't bother to tell us because we were too polite to notice." Sarah wanted to argue. She wanted to find another way. But deep down, in a place she rarely let herself look, she knew he was right. "What do you need from me?" she asked quietly. "Just do what you do best, Ambassador. Smile. Be polite. Keep the mask on." He paused. "Until I tell you to take it off." The communication ended. Sarah sat alone in the silence, looking at all those faces on her wall. And for the first time in 20 years, she let herself remember what she had been before she became an ambassador, before the mask, when she had been Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Marine Corps, before the peace, before the politeness, back when humans still remembered who they really were. She pulled out an old photograph from her desk drawer. Her old unit, hard faces, harder eyes, the kind of people who didn't need to pretend to be dangerous because danger recognized its own. Maybe it's time, she whispered to the empty room. The Galactic Council Summit began with typical ceremony. 73 species gathered in the Great Hall. The moth-like Vistari, the crystalline Shen, the massive Krogar who could crush steel with their bare hands, and sitting on the highest platform, the Zrath Empire delegation. The Zrath looked like nightmares made flesh, 8 feet tall, armored skin, claws that could tear through most materials. They were apex predators from a death world, and they made sure everyone knew it. Emperor Voskrath himself had come to the summit. He rarely left his throne world, but this was special. This was about humiliating the humans one more time, about taking what he wanted and daring them to object. It was entertainment. Ambassador Chen sat in humanity's small corner of the hall. She wore her usual simple clothes. Her hair was neat. Her smile was in place. Voskrath began his speech by listing the generous demands he was making of the human territories. More colony worlds, more resources, more restrictions on human shipbuilding. Other council members shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. The Zrath Empire was powerful. No one wanted to oppose them over humans. Chen stood up. Her voice was soft, polite as always. "If I may, Emperor, I have a question." Voskrath laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "The human speaks. How delightful. Ask your question, little prey. Why do you think we've never fought back?" The hall went silent. The Emperor leaned forward. "Because you are weak, helpless. You know you would lose." Sarah's smile didn't change, but something in her eyes did. "No, Emperor. We've never fought back because we were trying to be good neighbors. We were trying to fit in. We were trying to be civilized." She paused. "We were holding back, holding back." Voskrath roared with laughter. "You pathetic." "For you," Sarah interrupted. Her voice was still soft, but now it carried through the entire hall. "We were holding back for you, all of you." She touched her communication device. Admiral Stone removed the mask, and in that moment, the galaxy discovered what humanity had been hiding behind all those smiles. The holographic displays around the council chamber suddenly flickered to life. Every screen, every monitor, every viewing platform, Admiral Stone's face appeared, but he wasn't alone. Behind him stood row after row of human soldiers. Not the small defense forces the council knew about. Not the mining ship escorts. This was something else entirely. "Greetings, Galactic Council," Stone said. His voice was calm, professional. Nothing like the apologetic tones they were used to hearing from humans. "I am Admiral Marcus Stone, commander of the Human Defense Force. The actual Human Defense Force." Voskrath snarled. "What is this theater? Some desperate bluff?" "No bluff, Emperor. Just truth. For 20 years, you've seen what we wanted you to see. Small ships, weak weapons, scared colonists. But that was never the full picture." The displays changed. Space stations appeared on screen. Massive structures hidden in the dark spaces between stars. Shipyards that stretched for kilometers. Weapons platforms that made the Council's best technology look primitive. A Vistari delegate's wings fluttered in shock. That's impossible. We monitor all human construction. We would have detected. You detected what we let you detect." Rita Vasquez stepped forward on screen. "Every sensor sweep, every inspection, every random check. We knew they were coming. We showed you empty space while building cities. We showed you mining equipment while forging weapons. We smiled and apologized while preparing for the day you pushed too far." The displays shifted again. Fleet formations appeared. Not the dozen patrol ships the Council thought humanity possessed. Hundreds of vessels, sleek destroyers, heavy cruisers, carrier groups that could project power across multiple systems. A Shen representative's crystalline body pulsed with confusion. "But your economy, your resources, how could you possibly afford?" Sarah Chen's voice cut through the murmurs. She was still standing in her corner, still smiling that soft smile. But now it looked different, less friendly, more predatory. "You thought we were poor, struggling, grateful for whatever scraps the Council threw our way." She walked toward the center of the chamber. Other delegates moved aside instinctively. "The asteroid colonies you gave us? The ones no one else wanted because they were too far out, too resource poor, too difficult to mine. Sarah's smile widened. They were perfect. No one watching, no one caring. We've been pulling rare metals and heavy elements from those worthless rocks for 2 decades. We've been building an entire industrial infrastructure that you never bothered to look for because you were so certain we were weak. Voskrath stood, his claws scraping against his throne. Lies. Even if you have ships, you have no warriors. Humans are soft, fragile. You faint at the sight of blood. The displays changed one more time. Combat footage began playing, but not from human history. This was recent, very recent. 3 days ago, Stone said, his voice hardening, a Zrath raiding party attacked Human Colony 17. They thought it would be easy. Another group of helpless farmers to terrorize. The footage showed Zrath warriors, 8 feet of armored terror, charging into a settlement. Colonists ran. Children screamed, then the colonists stopped running. Storage sheds burst open. Weapons emerged. Not primitive firearms. Advanced energy weapons. Plasma rifles. Tactical armor. The farmers weren't farmers anymore. One man, gray-haired and grandfatherly, put down a basket of vegetables. He picked up a rifle with the ease of someone who'd held one 1,000 times before. His eyes went cold. Professional, that's former Sergeant James Morrison, Rita explained. Retired from active service 15 years ago. He and his family wanted a quiet life farming. But humans don't forget their training. We don't forget who we are. The footage continued. The Zrath raiders suddenly found themselves fighting trained soldiers. The colonists moved with precision. They used tactics, flanking maneuvers, suppressing fire. They turned a peaceful settlement into a killing field in under 2 minutes. When it was over, not a single Zrath warrior left that planet alive. Not one human colonist had died. The council chamber was dead silent. You see, Sarah said softly, every human colony you thought was defenseless has people like the Morrisons, veterans, soldiers, warriors who chose peace but never forgot war. We sent our most experienced fighters to the frontier, not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to build something worth protecting. A Krogar delegate, one of the species who prided themselves on their warrior culture, spoke up. His voice shook slightly. How many of your people are trained fighters? Admiral Stone answered. Mandatory service. Every human. 3 years minimum. We learned a long time ago that peace is something you earn by being too dangerous to attack. But that's... A smaller delegate struggled to find words. That's 3 billion trained soldiers. 3,400,000,000, Rita corrected. Give or take. Most go on to civilian life after service. But they remember. They train their children. They stay ready. Because humans learned something important in our history. We learned that hoping for peace isn't enough. You have to be capable of war. Sarah reached the Emperor's platform. She looked up at Voskrath, still smiling. You asked why we never fought back, Emperor. Here's the truth. We fought a war on our homeworld once. A terrible war. It nearly destroyed us. We killed millions of our own people. We created weapons that could end all life. And when it was finally over, we looked at what we'd done and made a choice. She paused, letting the words sink in. Never again. Never would we let ourselves be victims. Never would we be helpless. But also, never would we be the aggressors. We would be strong enough to protect ourselves, but restrained enough to give peace a chance. So we hid our strength. We played weak. We gave everyone the chance to treat us fairly. Her smile faded. You failed that test, Emperor. 14 colony ships. 2,347 dead. Men, women, children, and every time we swallowed our rage. We filed protests. We accepted your excuses. We gave you chance after chance after chance. Voskrath's claws extended. You dare threaten the Zrath Empire. We will crush you. We have conquered 100 worlds, and we've studied every single one of those conquests, Stone said from the screens. We know your tactics, your strategies, your weaknesses. Emperor, humanity has been preparing for this conversation since the first time one of your ships fired on our people. The displays showed something new. Battle simulations. Zrath fleets engaging human forces. In every simulation the Zrath lost badly. Your warriors are strong, Rita explained. Individually, you could tear a human apart. But war isn't about individual strength anymore. It's about technology, strategy, the ability to adapt. And humans, She smiled grimly. Humans are very good at adapting. Sarah looked around the council chamber at all the representatives from all the different species. Some looked shocked. Some looked afraid. A few looked relieved. "We're not asking permission anymore," she said clearly. "We're stating facts. The Zrath Empire will cease all hostile actions against human territories immediately. You will pay reparations for the lives you've taken, and you will never ever threaten a human colony again." Voskrath's roar shook the chamber. "Or what? You'll declare war? The entire council will stand with us. They fear the Zrath." "No," Sarah said quietly. "They don't fear you. They tolerate you, because opposing you wasn't worth the cost." She turned to address the full council. "But now you have another option. Humanity is offering protection, real protection, to any council member tired of being bullied, tired of giving up resources because they're afraid, tired of losing people to Zrath accidents." Silence. Then a single delegate stood. One of the Vestari, a moth-like species whose worlds had been raided by the Zrath for decades. The Vestari accept humanity's offer. Another stood. Then another. Within minutes, 40 species had stood. More than half the council. Voskrath looked around in disbelief and rage. "This is not over, humans. You have made an enemy today." Sarah's soft smile returned. But now everyone could see it for what it truly was. Not weakness, not friendliness or warning. "No, Emperor. We made an enemy 20 years ago when you killed the first human colonist. Today," she tilted her head, "today you just found out about it." Emperor Voskrath did exactly what Sarah knew he would do. He declared war. Within 6 hours of leaving the council summit, Zrath battle fleets were mobilizing. 50 warships, the pride of the empire. Each vessel was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that had reduced planets to ash. The Emperor broadcast his intentions across every communication channel in the galaxy. "The humans will learn their place. We will crush their hidden fleets. We will burn their colonies. We will make an example of them that the galaxy will never forget." Other species watched and waited, some with hope, some with fear, all wondering the same thing. Could the humans really back up their words? Admiral Stone stood in the command center of Defense Station Omega. Around him, holographic displays showed the Zrath fleet approaching Human Colony 7. It was an agricultural world. 10 million people, mostly families. The Emperor had chosen it specifically for maximum terror value. "They think we'll surrender to save civilians," Rita said, watching the data streams. "They don't understand humans at all," Stone replied. He opened a communication channel. "Colony 7, this is Defense Command. Status?" A woman's face appeared on screen. She was middle-aged, with dirt under her fingernails and calluses on her hands. But her eyes were steady, calm. "This is Governor Patricia Wells. We received the evacuation order, Admiral. But we're not evacuating." "Governor, with respect, sir, no. This is our home. We built it. We raised our children here. And we're not running." She glanced to the side, and the camera view widened. Behind her stood thousands of colonists. Every single one was armed. Every single one wore the look of someone who'd made their choice. An old man stepped forward. Morrison, the same grandfather from the combat footage. "Admiral, Colony 7 has 16,000 combat veterans, another 25,000 with basic training. We've been preparing defensive positions for 3 years, ever since the Zrath started making threats." He smiled grimly. "Let them come. We'll show them what farmers can do." Stone felt a swell of pride. This was humanity, not the pretend version they'd shown the galaxy. The real version, stubborn, defiant, unwilling to yield even when facing impossible odds. "Very well, Colony 7, but you won't be alone. Hold for 2 hours. Help is coming." "We'll be here, sir." Colony 7 out. The connection ended. Rita pulled up fleet positions. "The nearest response group is the Valkyrie Battle Group, 12 ships. They can reach Colony 7 in 90 minutes. Send them. Full authorization. Remove all restrictions." Rita's hands paused over the controls. "Sir, if we remove the restrictions..." The galaxy wanted to see what we're really capable of. Stone's voice was ice. "Let's show them." She nodded and entered the commands. Across human space, a signal went out. A signal that hadn't been transmitted in 20 years. Restriction Protocol 0. Disabled all units. Full combat authorization rules of engagement. None. The Zrath fleet arrived at Colony 7 expecting an easy victory. They found a fortress. Governor Wells had been modest. The colonists hadn't just prepared defensive positions. They'd turned the entire planet into a weapon. Orbital defense platforms, hidden beneath holographic projections of agricultural satellites, suddenly came online. Railguns that had been disguised as irrigation equipment began tracking targets. The farmhouses opened up, revealing missile silos. The Zrath commander barely had time to register surprise before the colonists opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space. Missiles streaked toward the fleet. The first 3 Zrath warships lost their shields in seconds, but 50 ships was still 50 ships. The Zrath began their bombardment. Plasma cannons lit up the darkness. Kinetic weapons rained down on the colony. The colonists fired back with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. The Zrath were too many, too strong. On the colony surface, Morrison held his position in a defensive bunker. His granddaughter, 15 years old, was loading magazines beside him. "Grandpa, are we going to die?" He looked at her. This girl who loved books and music, who'd never wanted to hurt anyone, who was now calmly preparing weapons because that's what humans did when their homes were threatened. "Maybe, sweetheart, but we're going to make them remember us." Then the sky changed. 37 points of light appeared in orbit. Not the slow, visible approach of normal ships. These vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into combat. Range, impossible, dangerous, the kind of maneuver that should have torn the ships apart. But human ships were built different. The Valkyrie battle group had arrived, and they'd brought friends. What the Zrath commander saw made no sense. The human ships were smaller than his warships, sleeker. They didn't look like military vessels. They looked like surgical instruments. Then they opened fire. Human weapons didn't blast away with raw power like Zrath cannons. They were precise, targeted, surgical. Lance beams punched through shields and into critical systems. Missiles didn't just explode. They released swarms of penetrator drones that burrowed into hull plating and detonated inside the ship. Electronic warfare systems shut down Zrath targeting computers before they could lock on. In the first 30 seconds, 5 Zrath warships went dark. The Zrath commander tried to rally his fleet. They outnumbered the humans. They were stronger, tougher, but the human ships moved like nothing he'd ever seen. They didn't fight like the lumbering battle cruisers he was used to. They fought like predators, like sharks in water, striking fast, hitting hard, breaking away before the Zrath could respond. A human destroyer, 1/10 the size of a Zrath battleship, flew directly at the enemy flagship. The Zrath crew prepared to swat it aside. Then the destroyer split apart. Not destroyed, designed. It separated into 6 smaller attack craft that swarmed over the battleship, targeting weapon ports and engine clusters. The Zrath tried to bring their superior firepower to bear, but the humans were always moving, always adapting. Every time the Zrath thought they had a pattern, the humans changed tactics, because that's what humans did. They adapted. On the human flagship, Commander Jessica Park watched the battle with cold efficiency. She was young, only 32, but she'd trained her entire life for this. Target their command ship's bridge. Precision strike. I want the commander alive. Ma'am, that's a nearly impossible shot at this range with this many variables. I know. She smiled. Take it anyway. The gunner grinned and lined up the shot. A single lance beam threading through the chaos of battle, through the defensive fire, through the point defense systems. It hit the Zrath command ship's bridge shield generator. Just the generator. Nothing else. The shield flickered and died. Now, Park said calmly. Boarding teams. Assault shuttles launched. They looked like simple transport craft. But when they hit the Zrath hull, they didn't dock. They cut. Plasma torches carved through armor like it was paper. Human Marines poured into the Zrath flagship. The Zrath crew had never fought humans in close combat. They expected weak prey, soft flesh that would tear easily under their claws. They got soldiers. Humans in powered armor moved through the corridors like ghosts. Their weapons fired rounds that punched through Zrath armor. Their tactics were flawless. Room clearing, hallway combat, zero hesitation. One Zrath warrior, massive and terrifying, charged at a human Marine. The Marine didn't run. She sidestepped, moved inside his reach, and planted a shaped charge on his armor. She was 3 meters away when it detonated. The Zrath had size, strength, natural weapons. Humans had training, technology, and something more important, experience. Humanity had been fighting wars since before they discovered fire. They'd fought with rocks, with spears, with guns and bombs and nuclear weapons. They'd fought in trenches, in jungles, in deserts and cities and the depths of space. War wasn't something humans learned. It was something they'd perfected over 10,000 years. In 12 minutes, the human Marines had control of the Zrath flagship. In 23 minutes, 15 more Zrath ships had been disabled or destroyed. The remaining Zrath fleet tried to retreat. "Let them go," Commander Park ordered. Her second officer looked confused. "Ma'am, we have them. We could end this now." "No, we let them run. We let them tell the Emperor what happened here." She leaned back in her chair. "Fear is a weapon too. And right now, we're teaching the galaxy to fear the right species." On Colony 7, Morrison stood on the bunker roof, watching the Zrath fleet limp away into the darkness. His granddaughter stood beside him. "We won," she whispered. "We survived," he corrected. "The war is just beginning." She looked up at him. "Are we the bad guys now, Grandpa? For being this strong?" Morrison thought about that. About the mask humanity had worn. About the price of peace and the cost of war. "No, sweetheart. We're not bad guys. We're just done pretending to be something we're not." He put his arm around her shoulders. "The galaxy wanted us to be sheep. But sheep don't survive. Wolves do, and humans." He smiled. "We've always been wolves. We just forgot for a little while." Above them, the human fleet began preparations for the next phase, because Emperor Voskrath wouldn't stop. His pride wouldn't let him, and humanity was done being polite about it. Emperor Voskrath's throne room was built to intimidate. The walls were made from the bones of extinct species. The floor was polished black stone, stained with the blood of 1,000 executions. The throne itself sat atop a pyramid of skulls from defeated enemies. But right now, none of that mattered, because the Emperor was afraid. He watched the battle footage from Colony 7 for the 100th time. His fleet, his warriors, routed by a species he'd dismissed as prey. "Impossible," he hissed. "This cannot be." His War Master, General Krathvon, stood nearby. The old warrior had fought in 50 campaigns. He'd conquered 20 worlds. He knew war intimately. "It is possible, my Emperor. And it happened." Krathvon's voice was careful. "The humans have been preparing for this for decades. We underestimated them. Then we will not underestimate them again." Voskrath's roar shook the chamber. "Summon every fleet, every warship, every warrior in the Empire. We will gather the greatest armada ever assembled. We will drown the humans in our numbers. My Emperor, that would leave our other territories undefended." "I don't care!" The Emperor's claws gouged marks in his throne. "The humans humiliated us in front of the entire council. Every species that once feared us now questions our strength. If we don't crush humanity completely, the Empire will fall apart. Rebellions will spread. We'll lose everything." Krathvon bowed. He understood. This wasn't about territory anymore. This was about survival. The Zrath Empire was built on fear. If that fear evaporated, subject worlds would rise up. Allies would abandon them. The whole structure would collapse. "How many ships?" the War Master asked. "All of them." 300 warships. 1 million warriors. We will turn Earth itself into ash. We will make humans extinct, and the galaxy will remember why they should fear the Zrath. News of the massive Zrath mobilization spread across the galaxy like wildfire. 300 ships. It was unprecedented, overwhelming, unstoppable. Ambassador Chen received emergency communications from 24 council species, all saying the same thing: make peace, surrender, save yourselves. Sarah sat in her quarters, reading message after message. Species that had stood with humanity at the council were now backing away. The fear was back. The Zrath had reminded everyone why they'd ruled through terror for so long. Admiral Stone's face appeared on her screen. "They're abandoning us," she said quietly. "Did you expect different? Fear is easier than courage. They stood with us when they thought we'd win easily. Now that it looks hard, he shrugged. Humans stand alone. Like always, can we win this, Marcus? 300 ships. Honestly, I don't know. We've run the simulations 1,000 times. Best case scenario, we lose half our fleet and barely survive. Worst case. He didn't need to finish. Sarah stood and walked to her wall of pictures. All those faces, all those families. Children who'd never asked for this war. What's the alternative? Surrender? Let the Zrath make an example of us? No alternative, we fight. We make it cost them everything. And if we lose, Stone's voice hardened, we make sure the galaxy never forgets what it cost to kill humanity. A third face joined their communication. Admiral Rebecca Chen, Marcus's counterpart in the exploration fleet. She looked exhausted but determined. I've been reviewing our deep space assets, Rebecca said. We have options the Zrath don't know about. Experimental weapons, prototype ships, things we've kept hidden even from the Council. How experimental? Sarah asked. Some of it barely works. Some of it might blow up our own ships. But Marcus is right. If we're going down, we're taking them with us. Stone pulled up a star chart. The Zrath fleet will take 2 weeks to fully assemble. Then another week to reach Earth. That gives us 3 weeks. To do what? To show the galaxy one final truth about humanity. His smile was grim. We don't just survive, we evolve. The next 3 weeks were a blur of activity. Every human shipyard went to maximum production. Every military base activated reserves. Veterans who'd been retired for decades put on uniforms again. Colonists fortified their worlds. Even civilians trained in emergency combat protocols. But the real work happened in secret. Deep in the asteroid field past Neptune, Research Station Blackout had been running experiments for 15 years. Weapons too dangerous to test near populated worlds. Systems too experimental to risk on active duty ships. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had been the chief scientist there for a decade. She was brilliant, slightly crazy, and completely dedicated to one goal, making sure humanity could punch way above its weight class. Show me what you got, Admiral Stone said as he toured the facility. Yuki grinned. Where do I start? We've got plasma weapons that can crack a planet's crust. Missiles that can track targets through FTL jumps. Shield systems that fold space itself. Do they work? Define work. She laughed at his expression. Okay. Seriously, we've had about a 60% success rate. The other 40% either exploded, created black holes, or opened portals to dimensions we don't understand. Comforting. Hey, you wanted weapons that could stop 300 ships. I've got weapons that could stop 3,000 ships. They might also accidentally destroy the solar system, but you can't have everything. Stone looked at the arsenal surrounding him. Weapons that violated every council treaty. Systems that pushed physics to its breaking point. Technology that terrified even the people who built it. We'll take it all. Whatever works. Whatever might work. Load it onto the fleet. Some of this stuff is really unstable, Admiral. So are we, Doctor. So are we. Meanwhile, Ambassador Chen was fighting a different kind of battle. The Galactic Council had called an emergency session. The Zrath had demanded they condemn humanity, force them to surrender, threaten sanctions against any species that helped them. Sarah stood alone in the council chamber. No other human representatives beside her. Just one woman against the entire galaxy. The council must take action, a Krogar delegate rumbled. The Zrath fleet will pass through multiple territories on their way to Earth. This affects us all. Then stop them, Sarah said simply. Stop them. How? They have 300 ships. You could fight. Stand with us. Show the Zrath that the Council isn't just a collection of scared species waiting to be told what to do. Silence. Sarah looked around at all the representatives. Some couldn't meet her eyes. Others looked sympathetic but resigned. I see. So the Council's purpose is to maintain peace, except when it's difficult. To stand for justice, except when it's dangerous. She smiled sadly. You know what humanity calls that? Cowardice. How dare you? A Vistari delegate, one who'd stood with them before, fluttered angrily. We have our own people to protect. Our own worlds. We cannot risk, and what happens after they destroy us? Sarah interrupted. Do you think the Zrath will stop? They'll have proven that overwhelming force works. That terror works. Every species in this council will be next. One by one, because you taught them that you won't fight back. A small voice spoke up. A delegate from Minara, a tiny species that looked like bipedal rabbits. They were prey animals. Peaceful, weak by galactic standards. The Minaran people stand with humanity. Everyone turned to stare. The Minaran delegate, trembling but determined, continued. We have no military, no weapons, no way to fight, but we will not abandon those who stood for us. If the Zrath want to reach Earth, they will have to cross Minaran space, and we will not give permission. It was suicide. Everyone knew it. The Zrath could glass Minara in an afternoon, but the small delegate stood firm. Then another voice, a Shen representative, their crystalline body pulsing with determination. Shen space is also closed to the Zrath fleet. Another. The Vistari will not permit passage. One by one, species stood. Not the big ones, not the powerful ones, the small species, the ones the galaxy overlooked, the ones who knew what it was like to be prey, 47 species in the end, creating a chain of territories between the Zrath Empire and Earth, a chain that the Zrath fleet would have to break through. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. You don't have to do this. You can't stop them. The Minaran delegate smiled. No, but we can slow them down. Buy you time. And maybe... They looked around at the other small species standing with them. Maybe show the galaxy that courage isn't about being strong. It's about standing up anyway. Admiral Stone received the news while overseeing final fleet preparations. They're doing what? He couldn't believe it. Rita showed him the communications. The small species have formed a defensive line. They're not attacking the Zrath, just standing in the way. The Zrath fleet can go around, but it'll add weeks to their journey. If they go through, it'll be a massacre. Yes, sir. Marcus sat down heavily. These species had no chance. They were sacrificing themselves to buy humanity time. Change of plans, he said quietly. We're not waiting for the Zrath to reach Earth, sir. If they want to get to us, they have to go through our friends first. We won't let that happen. He stood, decision made. Prep the fleet. We're going to meet the Zrath halfway, on our terms, in the Minaran sector. Admiral, that gives us less time to prepare. Less strategic advantage, I know. But those little rabbit people just put themselves between us and extinction. The least we can do is make sure they don't die for nothing. He looked at Rita. Besides, humanity has always fought better when we're protecting something. Rita smiled. The fleet will be ready, sir. Good, because we're about to teach the Zrath the most important lesson about humanity. What's that? We don't just fight for ourselves. We fight for anyone brave enough to stand with us, even if it's just standing in the way. In the Zrath fleet, Emperor Voskrath received word of the blockade. Pathetic. These insects think they can stop us. He laughed. Destroy them. Every world. Every ship. Every living thing. Show them the price of defying the Zrath Empire. General Krathvon felt a cold dread. My Emperor, if we massacre Council species, will what? They already fear us. Now they'll remember why. The Emperor's eyes gleamed with madness. And when we're done, we'll do the same to Earth. No mercy. No survivors. Complete extinction. The general said nothing. He'd served the Empire his entire life. Believed in its strength. Its dominance. But looking at the Emperor now, seeing the madness in his eyes, Krathvon wondered if they'd already lost something important. The Zrath fleet jumped to FTL. 300 ships, 1 million warriors, heading straight for the Minaran sector, where the human fleet was waiting and where the galaxy would finally see what happened when humanity stopped holding back completely. The Minaran sector was empty space, no planets, no resources, just a vast stretch of nothing between territories, the perfect place for species to avoid each other. Now it was about to become a graveyard. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of the HSFS Indomitable, humanity's flagship. Around him, 200 human vessels held formation. Everything humanity had built in secret. Everything they'd prepared for. It wasn't enough. 300 Zrath ships were coming. And behind the human fleet, scattered across the sector, 47 species had positioned their small defensive forces, transports, science vessels, a few outdated warships. They couldn't fight, but they could witness. All ships report ready, Admiral, Rita announced. Stone nodded. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. Every ship, every crew member, 20,000 humans about to face the impossible. This is Admiral Marcus Stone. In a few minutes, the Zarath Empire is going to arrive with everything they have. They expect us to run, to hide behind our new friends, to beg for mercy. He paused. They still don't understand humans. On ships throughout the fleet, crews listened. Veterans and rookies, engineers and pilots. Every single person who'd volunteered for this. 20 years ago, we made a choice. We decided to hide our strength, to give peace a chance, to be gentle. And you know what? It was the right choice. Because of that choice, we built colonies, raised families, created a civilization worth protecting. He looked at the tactical display. The Zarath fleet signature was approaching. Minutes away, but that chapter is over. Today, the galaxy sees who we really are. Not the species that apologizes, not the species that hides. Today they see the species that survived ice ages and plagues. The species that split the atom and walked on their moon before they even left their own solar system. The species that looked at the vast, hostile universe and said, "We belong here too." On Colony 7, Morrison and his granddaughter listened to the broadcast. In research stations and mining outposts and frontier worlds across human space, millions listened. We're not fighting for territory today. We're not fighting for resources. We're fighting because 47 species had the courage to stand with us, and we will not let them stand alone. We're fighting because the Zarath need to learn that fear cuts both ways. And we're fighting because humanity has never ever known when to quit. He smiled. So let's show them what humans do best. Let's adapt, let's survive, and let's make them regret ever hearing the name humanity. The channel closed and the Zarath fleet arrived. 300 ships dropped out of FTL in perfect formation. A wall of steel and fury, the largest fleet in galactic history. Emperor Voskrath stood on his command deck, looking at the sensor readings. The human fleet looked tiny by comparison. This is their great resistance? 200 ships against 300? He laughed. Open a channel. Let me speak to them. The channel opened. Admiral Stone's face appeared. Human. You are outmatched, outgunned. This is your last chance to surrender. Stone smiled. You know what your problem is, Emperor. You think war is about numbers, about size, about strength. It is. No, Stone's smile widened. War is about will, and humans have been refining our will for 10,000 years. We've survived everything the universe could throw at us. Ice ages, meteor strikes, supervolcanoes, plagues that killed half our population. And every single time we came back stronger. Words, just words from a dying species. Maybe. Let's find out. Stone leaned forward. You wanted to see what humanity could do when we stopped being polite. Here it is. Fleet weapons free, engage. The human fleet exploded into action, but not in any formation the Zarath expected. The ships scattered, broke apart, moved in patterns that made no tactical sense. Then the Zarath understood. It wasn't chaos. It was precision chaos. Every human ship was operating independently, but they were connected, sharing data in real time. Each ship knew where every other ship was, what they were targeting, what they were doing next. The fleet moved like a single organism with 200 bodies. The Zarath fired their massive plasma cannons, devastating weapons that could destroy cities. The human ships dodged, not all of them. 2 ships took hits, shields flaring. But the rest moved like they knew where the shots would be before they were fired, because they did. Predictive Combat AI online. Commander Park reported from her destroyer. The Zarath use standard targeting patterns. We've analyzed them. The computer knows where they'll shoot before they do. It was technology the Council banned. AI assistance in combat was considered too dangerous, too unpredictable. Humanity had built it anyway. The human counterattack was surgical. Lance beams targeted specific systems, shield generators, weapons arrays, engine clusters, not trying to destroy ships, but to disable them. Why aren't they going for killing blows? General Krathfon asked, watching the battle. Then he saw why. Every disabled Zarath ship became an obstacle. Dead in space, they blocked firing lanes, disrupted formations. The 300-ship advantage was becoming a liability. Clever, he muttered. The battle raged. Human ships took damage, 3 destroyed, 5 more crippled, but they were inflicting casualties at a 10-to-1 ratio. Then the Zarath adapted. They tightened formations, covered each other's weaknesses, used their numbers properly. The casualties began evening out. "We can't sustain this," Rita reported. "We're losing ships faster than we can replace them." "At this rate," "I know," Stone said. "Time for Phase 2. Signal Dr. Tanaka." Deep in the fleet, a vessel that didn't look like a warship received the signal. It was a research ship, unarmed, unarmored, and carrying experimental weapons that had a 60% chance of working. Dr. Yuki Tanaka grinned. "Finally. Activating Project Thunderbolt." She pressed a button. Every human ship's power signature suddenly spiked. Not a little, massively. Energy readings went off the charts. The Zrath sensors went crazy. "What is that?" Voskrath demanded. "What are they doing?" What humanity was doing was breaking physics. The experimental weapons Dr. Tanaka had developed weren't just advanced. They were revolutionary. Weapons that folded space. Missiles that existed in quantum superposition until they hit. Energy beams that ignored shields by phasing through them. One Zrath battleship simply folded. Space bent around it, crushed it and spat out a compressed cube of metal. Another battleship found itself hit by a missile that struck it in 3 places simultaneously because it existed in multiple quantum states until observation collapsed it. A third battleship's shields meant nothing when a phased energy beam passed through them like they weren't there and carved the ship in half. "Impossible!" Voskrath roared. "Improbable," Stone corrected. "There's a difference. Humans specialize in improbable, but the weapons were unstable. One human ship's experimental cannon overloaded and destroyed the ship. Another's quantum missile collapsed into a micro-black hole that had to be quickly neutralized. 60% success rate, just like Dr. Tanaka promised, but 60% was enough. The Zrath fleet was in chaos. Nothing worked like it should. The rules of warfare they'd relied on for centuries were meaningless. The humans were fighting with weapons that shouldn't exist. General Krathvon made a decision. "My Emperor, we must withdraw. We're losing too many ships. We need to regroup, analyze their technology." "No!" The Emperor's claws dug into his command throne. "We outnumber them. We are stronger. Attack! All ships forward." It was a mistake. The Zrath fleet surged forward in a massive wave. Raw aggression. Pure fury. Exactly what Stone was waiting for. "Now," he said calmly, "spring the trap." The human fleet suddenly pulled back, retreated. The Zrath thought they were winning, pressed harder. They flew right into the asteroid field that the humans had been carefully seeding with mines for the past hour. Thousands of autonomous explosives hidden in the rocks. The Zrath center formations hit the minefield at full speed. Explosions blossomed like flowers. Not enough to destroy capital ships, but enough to blind them, disrupt them, scatter them. And in that moment of chaos, the small species fleets attacked. Not with weapons. They had no weapons that could hurt the Zrath. But they had ships, and those ships had engines, and they were willing to use them. Minaran transports rammed into disabled Zrath vessels. Shensine's ships flew into engine clusters, sacrificing themselves to cause more damage. Vestari colony ships filled with volunteers became kinetic missiles. "No," Krathvon shouted. "They're committing suicide!" But it was working. Every suicide run damaged another Zrath ship, created more chaos, more obstacles, and the human fleet carved through them like a knife. Sarah Chen watched from the council station, tears streaming down her face. Those brave little species, those people who barely had weapons, throwing themselves into the battle to help humanity. She opened a channel. "Admiral Stone, you have to save them. They're killing themselves." "I know." Stone's voice was tight with emotion. "And we're not going to waste their sacrifice. All ships, protect our allies. Anyone who wants to retreat, cover their withdrawal." The human fleet shifted. Now they weren't just fighting. They were shielding. Human ships moved between the Zrath and the smaller species vessels. Taking hits meant for others. One human cruiser, the Perseus, put itself directly in the path of a plasma barrage meant for a Minaran transport. The shields held for 3 seconds, then failed. The ship started venting atmosphere, but the Minaran transport escaped. The captain of the Perseus, Commander Liu, opened a final broadcast as her ship died around her. "Worth it," she said simply, then smiled. "Humanity endures." The ship exploded, but her sacrifice inspired something. Every human crew member saw it. saw their captain die protecting someone else, and they fought harder. Not for victory, not for survival, for each other, for the friends who stood with them, for the idea that some things were worth dying for. Emperor Voskrath watched his fleet being systematically destroyed, watched as human ships fought with a ferocity that defied logic, watched as those weak little species somehow managed to matter. "We're losing," he whispered. "How are we losing?" General Krathvon had the answer. "Because they're fighting for something, my emperor. And we're just fighting." The Zrath had numbers, strength, fear. Humanity had courage, determination, and something the Zrath had never understood: hope. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Zrath fleet was destroyed. Not completely. 70 ships managed to escape, but 230 Zrath vessels floated dead in space. The largest military defeat in Zrath history. The human fleet had 43 ships left, battered, damaged, but alive. And around them, the small species vessels, the ones that survived, the ones who'd stood with them. Admiral Stone opened a general channel to all ships, human and non-human. Today, the galaxy learned a truth. Not about humans, about all of us. He looked at the readings showing those small species ships. Courage isn't about being the biggest, the strongest, the most feared. Courage is about standing up anyway, about protecting those who can't protect themselves, about being willing to sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. He paused. Humanity spent 20 years hiding our strength, pretending to be weak. And you know what? In that time, we learned something important. We learned that real strength isn't about how many ships you have or how big your weapons are. Real strength is knowing when to fight and when to make peace, when to hide and when to reveal yourself, when to stand alone and when to stand together. On his throne world, Emperor Voskrath listened to the broadcast. His empire was broken, his fleet destroyed, his reputation shattered, and he realized too late what humanity had really been doing all those years. They hadn't been weak. They'd been waiting, learning, watching, giving everyone a chance to be better. But when that chance ran out, when pushed too far, they became something terrifying, not because they were cruel, but because they were capable. Admiral Stone's broadcast continued. The Zrath Empire is finished, not because we destroyed them, but because they destroyed themselves. Fear is a weak foundation for power. Eventually, someone stops being afraid. Today, that was us. He looked directly into the camera. To every species watching, humanity is offering a new deal. We will share our technology, our protection, our friendship, not in exchange for submission, not in exchange for resources, just because we can. Because the galaxy is better when we help each other instead of fighting each other. Sarah Chen, watching from the council station, smiled through her tears. And to anyone who thinks we're still prey to be hunted, Stone's voice went cold. Today was us being polite. Test us again, and we'll show you what happens when humanity stops playing nice. The broadcast ended. 3 months later, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the rebuilt council chamber. 47 species had been granted permanent council seats. The small species, the ones who'd stood with humanity, the Zrath Empire had fractured. Subject worlds rebelled. Allied species abandoned them. Emperor Voskrath was dead, killed by his own people who blamed him for the disaster. General Krathvon surprisingly had survived. He'd led the retreat, saved those 70 ships, and when the Empire collapsed, he'd come to Earth personally, to surrender. Not as an empire. As refugees, the Zrath people were starving, dying. Their warrior culture had left them unable to feed themselves without conquered worlds. Stone had shocked everyone by accepting. You'll work, he told Krathvon. Farming, mining, building, you'll learn to create instead of destroy. And in return, humanity will feed your people. It was an insane offer. The Zrath had tried to exterminate them, but it was also the most human thing possible. Mercy, even for enemies. Now, Sarah stood before the council and made an announcement. Humanity proposes the creation of the Galactic Alliance. Not a government, not an empire, a coalition of free species working together, defending each other, helping each other, learning from each other. She looked around the chamber. For 20 years we wore a mask. We pretended to be weak because we wanted peace. But we learned something important. Peace doesn't come from appearing weak. It comes from being strong enough to choose peace, from being capable of war but wise enough to avoid it. A Minoran delegate stood. And when war cannot be avoided? Sarah's soft smile returned. But now everyone knew what it really meant. Then we remind the galaxy who humanity is. Not sheep, not prey, not victim, she paused. Survivors, protectors, and, if necessary, predators. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Alliance was born, not through conquest, not through fear, but through courage, through sacrifice, through species working together, and at its heart was humanity, not because they were the strongest, but because they'd shown the galaxy a different way. On Earth, Morrison sat on his porch with his granddaughter. They watched the sunset over their rebuilt farm. "Grandpa, will we have to fight again?" "Maybe, sweetheart. Maybe not. But we'll be ready either way. Are we still the good guys?" Morrison thought about that. About the mask. About the war. About mercy for enemies and protection for friends. "I think we're something better," he said finally. "We're human. We make mistakes. We fight when we have to. But we also help when we can. We protect the weak. We stand with the brave. And we never ever give up." She leaned against him. "I like that. Me too, kid. Me too." Above them, human ships patrolled the stars. Not hiding anymore. Not pretending. Just being what they'd always been. Humanity. Imperfect. Stubborn. Occasionally. Violent, but also brave, compassionate, and absolutely unstoppable when defending what they loved. The galaxy had finally seen the truth, and they would. Never forget it. The end. Thank you for watching. If this story of humanity's courage inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe for more epic HFY stories. What did you think of humanity's reveal? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, we're not prey. We're not predators. We're human. And that's more than enough.